Welcome weird creatures to Wednesday. It is reset day in Europe as well, and what we have to go over for today is the raid, because we have ditched looking over the raid for the past couple of weeks, and in the past couple of weeks a few interesting things happened in the raid, namely, number one, nerfs. We have gotten Halondrus nerfed, we have gotten Anduin nerfed, and we have gotten the Jailer nerfed, and then just today, just in this reset, we are getting the balance tuning to the specs we pointed out a couple of days ago. 5 buffs: Affliction, Beast Mastery, Arms, Windwalker, and Outlaw Rogue, and then the nerf then reverted to be a smaller nerf to Blood Death Knight. So, what we're going to be doing is going to be slightly different than usual, because we're going to be starting immediately from the performance. That's right, because what we have in front of us here is, at least to my memory, I'm going to call up to you guys in case you remember anything weirder, but at the very least, to my memory, this is the weirdest top 6 damage dealers I have seen in a raid ever. It's a record, because the top 6 of this week is Destruction Warlock, Demonology Warlock, Survival Hunter, Frost Death Knight, Elemental Shaman, and Enhancement Shaman. This is definitely a weird one. I have not seen all of these specs doing so well together in basically forever. Sometimes we have seen Destro and Demo being good. You know, Warlock is used often enough to be at the top with one of their specs, but then after that it starts getting weird. We have barely ever seen Enhancement being at the top. We have seen, for a very brief period in BFA, sometimes even further back in Mists, Elemental being good, and then Frost Death Knight also wasn't really a very popular spec, doing very well often, and then lastly, fucking Survival. Really, Survival has been a meme since their inception as a melee spec in Legion. So, seeing them all together in the top 6 is basically the deforming of EXODIA. They have formed together the hipster EXODIA of DPS specs doing well in one tier. I'm pretty sure the only way this could be beaten, the only way this matching could be beaten is if Destro and Demo were replaced by Feral and Red Paladin. Yeah, that would be the full complete list of the weirdest ever top 6 in DPS. But you know, even this one is weird enough. And of course, when we talk about performance, if we look at the top 6 being super weird, what happens is that the bottom is also going to start looking super weird, because much like I have rarely seen a top performer in the raid looking this unique, same goes for the bottom, because we have at the bottom all 3 mage specs, all 2 warrior specs, and balanced druid. This is also quite weird. It's not often that you can see all of these specs doing bad together. You know, yes, sometimes Fire Mage is not good, not often, it's Blizzard's poster child, but sometimes you see Arcane, very often you see Arcane not doing very well. You have seen plenty of times Balanced Druid not doing too well, or even things like Shadow Priest or Arms or Fury Warrior, but seeing them all together this low is also quite a weird and unique sight compared to what we are used to in terms of performance. We are living definitely in a weird timeline. I mean, you even have Red Paladin in the top half beating all of the rogue specs. Like, what is going on? It's just it's just a very weird tier in terms of performance, honestly. Of course, we do have some balance tuning coming in, so we can see here that the buffed specs were generally all low in terms of damage. Arms, Beast Mastery, Windwalker, Affliction are basically all in the bottom 6, so we will see what the buff is going to do for them. Outlaw is the only one that was performing a little bit better compared to the rest, so we will see also if Outlaw will start getting especially some more representation, considering they are by far the least played of the DPS specs in the raid right now. They are really not wanted at the moment. So as far as the damage goes, we will see in the next few days if anything changes with the balance tuning. What about the popularity? What we usually start with, the popularity, we have 2 major changes compared to the last couple of weeks of raiding. Number 1, obviously, is Destruction Warlock. As Destruction gets to do more and more, better and better, improvement after improvement, so does as a result their popularity. Destruction is now closer and closer to the top. They have risen even more from the last time we looked at them, and they are getting closer to Demonology. It is still likely they will not get that high after all. Demo is still the more overall complete spec, so I think destruction is kind of going to stop around here. Also, if you look, the gap to subtlety, the gap to reach subtlety in popularity it's quite large, so I don't think they will go that far. Talking about going far, what a nostalgic moment. It was so long ago when we were praising Survival Hunter for getting out of the bottom 3 DPS specs for popularity, and then they climbed out of the bottom 4, and then they climbed out of the bottom 5, and then bottom 6, 7, 8, and this week they climb out of the bottom 9 as well, passing Retribution Paladin. Much like Destruction, it's not gonna be too easy for them to climb any higher. Yes, Elemental is quite close to them in terms of popularity, but after Ele there is quite a large gap to reach Frost Death Knight, so I don't think Survival is going to rise even higher than where they are right now. Even then I would still be pretty happy as a Survival Hunter, considering where you used to be generally as a spec in the raid, so definitely going much better for them. As far as any other popularity change, not too much for healers, because we have the pretty much same continuation of what we looked at 2 weeks ago, which is Holy Priest getting more and more popular, Restoration Shaman still holding on to second place, and Restoration Druid getting closer and closer to kicking Holy Paladin out of the podium, out of the top 3 of healers. So we will see. It looks like, given the trend, that eventually Resto Druid will, overtake Holy Paladin in the top 3 of healers. Still no hope for Mistweaver, and even less of a hope for Discipline, given how popular Holy Priest is right now. Talking about the raid, we mentioned nerfs. So let's go and see what the nerfs did to the bosses, because we did have the kill percentage, the kill chance of bosses a couple of weeks ago. TLDR, how much of a chance do you have every time you pull this boss to actually kill it? So we looked at a couple of weeks ago having a pretty straightforward trend from the first boss to the last boss. The only major outlier was Halondrus, right? Halondrus being almost as hard as the Jailer. Now Halondrus has gotten giga nerfed. So what did this giga nerf impact in terms of difficulty? Well, you see that even just after a week, even just after one reset, Halondrus has skyrocketed in kill chance. It went from 0.5% to 2.6. It's obviously and unsurprisingly the biggest of jumps in difficulty rate compared to all the others. The only surprising thing is that Anduin has gotten nerfed, and yet 1 week later the chance of defeating Anduin has gotten even lower. In case you are confused, this is the direct result of nerfing Halondrus. Because more guilds now kill Halondrus, there are now more guilds just starting Anduin and chain wiping on him, so his kill chance is not getting any higher because of it. Eventually, it will smoothen out in a few weeks, but for now, the biggest of changes in terms of boss difficulty has definitely been the massive nerf to Halondrus. Now, there are not too many guilds progressing on the Jailer right now, but still, the Jailer was nerfed, and his kill chance as well has gotten quite a lot higher. Now, talking about news, it wasn't just the nerfs of the bosses, but we have the new of this reset balance tuning with Blood Death Knight, because previously we had the entire video dedicated to this balance tuning about just how bad of a nerf Blood Death Knight was receiving. Now, it might be a little bit off topic, because this is not exactly a raid-centered nerf, it was more for Mythic Plus, right? But the news worth mentioning is that the nerf was reverted before going live and then changed to a different type of nerf. This was a different type of nerf that was suggested by quite a few people, so it's interesting to see Blizzard following up with the, I guess, feedback given by the community. So now your Dancing Rune Weapon extension is going to stay the exact same, still 0.5 seconds per trigger of Heart Strike. The change is now to the cap of your strength stacking, because what the tier set was also doing was that whenever this effect procced, you were gaining 1% strength, and the cap was very high, was 75 stacks. So now the cap goes much lower down, it goes from 75 to 40 stacks, which means that even in the best case scenario as a Death Knight you will be gaining 40% strength instead of 75% strength. Now, my initial reaction is the same reaction I had when I posted this on Twitter, which is there were quite a few people being very vocal, even top players and very good players, Mythic Plus especially, complaining about the massive nerf that was being given to Death Knight. So now I just wonder how many of them will be complaining that this nerf is far too little, because this nerf is, for the record, far too little for what Blood Death Knight was doing. So nerfing it to 40% is definitely a nerf. I'm not denying it, but it's not very massive compared to the current power and the current power gap they have to other tanks. So yes, the previous nerf was too much, but this nerf is too little. So I don't think it's going to change too much in the landscape of meta for tanks, particularly for Mythic Plus. So yes, we have gotten a new nerf to Death Knight, but it's not as bad as before. We also have gotten this. I'm not sure what to describe it as. we mentioned the confusion as to why all of the other 4 specs were initially buffed by 4% while Outlaw was only getting buffed by 3%. Like, what was the logic behind that? Blizzard now decided to change it by pointing out that they would like to extend their thanks to the community for all of your discussion on the proposed adjustments. We really appreciate being able to harness the power of your feedback. The power of the feedback for the Outlaw buff was to go from 3% to 13%. Perhaps go from 3% to 10% and uncap Blade Flurry. It wasn't exactly to buff it from 3% to 4%, especially when Outlaw is one of the specs that benefits the least from their ability damage increase. They do a lot of damage with white melee auto attacks and their mastery extra procs, their main gauche. So this buff is actually a 1.5 to something % more damage increase to Outlaw, which is very, very minor, and it doesn't solve one of their core main issues, which can't be solved by just damage increase, which is the AoE target cap of Blade Flurry. So yeah, it's an interesting way to buff the spec. We will see in the next few days and resets how much of the buff is going to impact all of the specs that have been buffed and even the spec that has been nerfed, Blood Death Knight. But beyond that, these were all of the meaningful and worthwhile changes to point out for the raid and how the raid situation has been so far. So with this being said, guys, I'm going to take a break myself and leave you to the rest of your reset. Thank you guys again for watching the video. If you want to continue to support myself, my family, my children, and my house pets, you can like and comment down below, as well as subscribing to the channel. For today only, as a congratulation, as a meager congratulation, I'm going to allow the buffed specs players to subscribe to the channel. So thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, yeah, I know I am out of season. I know it's not Christmas anymore. I just like the shirt.